Good day, people of the Philippines. I, Melody Amor El Cortez, along with my group mates, will report validity and reliability. It is not unusual for teachers to receive complaints or comments from students regarding tests and assessments. From one thing, they may be an issue concerning the coverage of the test. Students may have been tested in areas that were not part of the content domain. They may not have been given the opportunity to study or learn the material. The emphasis of the test may also be too complex and inconsistent with the performance verb in the learning outcomes. Validity alone does not ensure high-quality assessment. Reliability of test results should also be checked. Questions on reliability surface if there are inconsistencies in the result when tests are administered over different time periods, sample of questions, or groups. Both validity and reliability are considered when gathering information or evidences about students' achievement. This chapter discusses the distinction between the two. Let's call one of our reporters to enlighten us on what is validity and its sources to establish. Hello, Miss Donna. Could you please enlighten our viewers, particularly the students and teachers who are listening with us? Explain what validity is and how to establish it.
Validity is a term derived from the Latin word validus, meaning strong. In view of assessment, it is deemed valid if it measures what it is supposed to. An assessment is valid if it measures a student's actual knowledge and performance with respect to the intended outcomes and not something else. Validity is defined as the level to which assessments are accurately measured depending on what they intend to measure. There are three sources of established validity, which are content-related evidence, criterion-related evidence, and construct-related evidence. We have the content-related evidence. It pertains to the extent to which the test covers the entire domain of content. It assesses whether a test is representative of all aspects of the construct. If a summative test covers a unit with 4 topics, then the assessment should contain items from each topic, which means the content of a test must cover all relevant parts of the subject it aims to measure. If some aspects are missing from the measurement, the validity is threatened. A test that appears to adequately measure the learning outcomes and content is said to possess face validity. Face validity looks at the superficial face value of the instrument. Face validity is about whether a test appears to measure what it's supposed to measure. This type of validity is concerned with whether a measure seems relevant and appropriate for what it's assessing on the surface. Instructional validity: the extent to which an assessment is systematically sensitive to the nature of instruction offered. Degree to which students' performances on a test accurately reflect the quality of instruction to promote students' mastery of what is being assessed. It is a measure of how well test content matches the content of actual classroom instruction. Table of specification is a test blueprint that identifies the content area and describes the learning outcomes at each learning of the cognitive domain. Table of specification is to identify the achievement domains being measured and to ensure that a fair and representative sample of questions appear on the test. The second sources of established validity: the criterion-related evidence. It refers to the degree to which test scores agree with an external criterion. It is related to external validity. It examines the relationship between an assessment and another measure of the same trait. The criterion-related evidence has 3 types of criteria. Achievement test scores. Achievement test scores refer to assessments which scores are often used to determine the level of instruction for which a student is prepared. We have ratings, grades, and other numerical judgment made by the teacher. And lastly, the career data. We have two types of criterion-related evidence, which are concurrent validity and predictive validity. Concurrent validity. It provides an estimate of a student's current performance in relation to a previously validated or established measure. It measures how well a new test compares to an well-established test. It can also refer to the practice of concurrently testing two groups at the same time, or asking two different groups of people to take the same test. Second, we have predictive validity. It pertains to the power or usefulness of test score to predict future performance. It is the degree to which test scores accurately predict scores in a criterion measure. The third sources of established validity is the construct-related evidence. A construct is an individual characteristic that explains some aspect of behavior. Construct-related evidence of validity is an assessment of the quality of the instrument used. It is the extent to which your test or measure accurately assesses what it's supposed to. It measures the extent to which the assessment is a meaningful measure of an observation trait or characteristic. The measure assesses the underlying theoretical construct it is supposed to measure. Three types of construct-related evidence. We have theoretical, logical, and statistical. Theoretical. A good construct has a theoretical basis. This means that a construct must be operationally defined or explained explicitly to differentiate it from other constructs. Next, logical. It is a concept created by combining various data in an orderly way. And lastly, we have statistical. It can be broad concepts or topics for a study and can be conceptually defined in that they have meaning in theoretical terms. We have two methods to establish construct validity. We have two methods to establish construct validity. We have the convergent and divergent. Convergent occurs when measures of constructs that are related are observed to be related. It refers to how closely the new scale is related to other variables and other measures of the same construct. It takes two measures that are supposed to be measuring the same construct and shows that they are related. Divergent occurs when constructs that are related are in reality observed not to be. It is a test that constructs that should have no relationship do, in fact, not have any relationship.
Can you give us some example of content-related evidence and the rest of the evidences?
To better illustrate the significance of content-related evidence, let's have two examples. One example explains how content validity can be helpful in a clinical setting and the other in a business setting. Assessment and measurement tools like surveys and questionnaires are quite common in the social and behavioral sciences. Content validity is a critical aspect of developing tools that can help practitioners understand and treat behavioral and mental health conditions. An example for criterion-related evidence is a job applicant takes a performance test during the interview process. If this test accurately predicts how well the employee will perform on the job, the test is said to have criterion validity. And for the construct-related evidence, an example is if the construct of intelligence is thought to be closely related to working memory, then examinees' results on a test thought to measure intelligence should be highly correlated with their results on a measure of working memory.
Okay, thank you, Miss Donna, for the meaningful report. So let's hear from our next reporter. Hello, Miss Ina. Can you please provide us with the 5 recommendations, treats to validity according to Miller, Lin, and Grunland 2009, and suggestions for improving validity according to Macmillan 2007?
Validity of assessment methods. Developing performance assessment involves 3 steps. First, define the purpose, determining the essential skills students need to develop and the content worthy of understanding. Second, choose the activity. Third, develop criteria for scoring. These three steps describes or define the assessment methods used to determine if what assessment is being used to fit the students. Students choose the activity that suits them for their assessment. Criteria for scoring, it describes the quality of evidence at different levels of achievements for each performance indicator. This means that the scoring criteria helps students understand the specific knowledge and skills they must demonstrate to each or exceed proficiency. There are 5 recommendations. First is the selected performance should reflect a valued activity. Second, the completion of performance assessment should provide a valuable learning experience. Third, the assessment of goals and objectives should be clearly aligned with the measurable outcomes of the performance activity. Fourth, the task should not examine extraneous or unintended variables. Fifth, performance assessment should be fair and free from bias. There are some traits to validity. First, unter-test directions. Second, complicated vocabulary and sentence structure. Third, ambiguous statements. Fourth, inadequate time limits. Fifth, inappropriate level of difficulty of test items. 6. Poorly constructed test items. And 7. Inappropriate test items for outcomes being measured. 8. Short test. 9. Improper arrangement of items. 10. Or lastly, identifiable patterns of answers.
Why is it important to know the different traits in validity and what are the possible reduction of the traits?
Thank you, Ms. Mel. It is crucial to know the different traits to validity in order to make the assessment and evaluation successful. Because the different traits to validity affects the measurement of the performance of the students during the assessment, and it also affects how the assessment or test supposed to result with. There are 14 suggestions of enhancing validity. First, ask others to judge the clarity of what you are assessing. Second, check to see if different ways of assessing the same thing give the same result. Third, sample a sufficient number of examples of what is being assessed. Fourth, prepare a detailed table of set specifications. Fifth, ask others to judge the match between the assessment items and the objectives of the assessment. 6. Compare groups known to differ on what is being assessed. 7. Compare scores taken before to those taken after instruction. 8. Compare predicted consequences to actual consequences. 9. Compare scores on similar but different traits. 10. Provide adequate time to complete the assessment. 11. Ensure appropriate vocabulary, sentence structure, and item difficulty. 12. Ask easy question first. 13. Use different methods to assess the same thing. 14. Use only for intended purposes. That's all the suggestions of enhancing validity.
To summarize the report of Ms. Donna and Ms. Ina, validity refers to the accuracy of an assessment whether or not it measures what it is supposed to measure. There are 3 sources of validity evidence. Content-related evidence, which is evidence about the extent to which the test accurately represents the target domain. Criterion-related evidence, which is evidence about the correlation between the test and the criterion variable taken as representative of the construct. This evidence has 2 types, which are concurrent validity and predictive validity. And construct-related evidence, which is evidence that a test or other measure assesses the underlying theoretical construct it is supposed to measure. This evidence also has 3 types, which are theoretical, logical, and statistical. It also includes 2 methods for establishing construct validity, convergent and divergent. Validity has 5 recommendations, traits, and suggestions to enhance. The next report would give us understanding about reliability. Let's call again our previous reporter, Miss Ina. Ina, we finished tackle the validity and its sources. How about reliability? It is the same with the validity or not? Can you explain reliability with us and its types?
Thank you again, Miss Mel. Reliability is the degree of consistency of a measure. A test will be reliable when it gives the same repeated result under the same conditions. For example, if you create a quiz to measure students' ability to solve quadratic equation, you should be able to assume that if a student gets an item correct, he or she will also get another similar items correct. So to answer the question of Ms. Mel, if reliability is the same to validity, this explains that reliability and validity are closely related, but they mean different things. A measurement can be reliable without being valid. However, if a measurement is valid, it is usually also reliable.
What does for a test to be valid, it has to reliable means?
What does it means? What does for a test to be valid? It has to be reliable. A test can be reliable, meaning that the test takers will get the same score no matter when or where they take it. Within the reason, of course, but doesn't mean that it is valid or measuring what is it supposed to measure. However, a test cannot be valid unless it is reliable. There are two types of reliability: the internal and external reliability. Internal reliability assesses the consistency of result across items within a test. Internal consistency reliability is a measure of reliability used to evaluate the degree to which different test items that prove the same construct produce similar result. For example, if a respondent express arrangement with a statement, "I like to ride bicycles," and "I've enjoyed riding bicycles in the past," and this arrangement with the statement, "I hate bicycles," this would be indicative of good internal consistency of the test. The second type of reliability is external reliability. Gauge the extent to which a measure varies from one use to another. External reliability means that your test or measure can be generalized beyond what you're using it for. For example, a claim that individual tutoring improved test scores should apply to more than one subject. The second type of reliability is external reliability. Gauges the extent to which a measure varies from one use to another. External reliability means that your test or measure can be generalized beyond what you are using it for. For example, a claim that individual tutoring improved test scores should apply to more than one subject.
Okay, thank you, Miss Ina. To proceed to our report, let's hear from Miss Mary to explain to us the sources of reliability evidence. Hello, Miss Mary. How can you say that the assessment is good or bad?
Yes, good day, Melody. There is a large impact of test or assessment to people's life, and reliability is one of our bases to know if a test is good or bad. When we say reliability, it's about consistency. We could say that an assessment is reliable if it is consistent with measuring variables. In other words, reliability is about producing the same results if given to the examinee on two occasions.
So how do we determine the degree of consistency of an assessment?
So to determine the degree of competency of an assessment, we use reliability coefficient. So what is reliability coefficient? It is defined as the ratio between true score variance on a test and the total observed score variance. So when we say true score, it refers to the portion of the score which is replicable or reliable. Thus, the variance of observed scores was assumed to be the sum of the variances of true scores and of uncorrelated measurement errors.
So, can you explain to us what are the sources of reliability evidence?
Yes, Melody. The sources of reliability evidences are the stability, equivalence, internal consistency, scorer-rater consistency, and decision consistency. Now, what are the uses of these sources? So, first, stability refers to retest stability. So in this method, it's about doing a test on the same sample of test takers. It's usually based on a test that measures stable variables like traits. The test retest reliability correlates scores obtained from two administrations of the same test over a period of time. There is usually weeks or months interval in the first test and the retest. It is used to determine the stability of test results over time. I think retest is the easiest method because we just try to know if the two tests results the same score from the same sample of test takers. It assumes that there is no considerable change in the construct between the first and second testing. Timing is critical because characteristics may change if the time interval is too long. So, as what I have said, the time interval in administering the two tests, it should not be too short or too long. Let's say, for example, you're giving an assessment today, and you give the same assessment on the next day. No, it should not be done. It should not be done that way because we could not measure the reliability of the assessment. A short gap between the testing sessions is also not recommendable because subjects may still recall the responses. There would be a tendency that the takers may have memorized the first test and answers the same on the second test. So if the test and retest scores are correlated, this means that there is a higher chance that the test is reliable. So another source of reliability evidence is equivalence. Parallel forms of reliability ascertain the equivalency of forms. It refers to two different versions of assessment which are administered to the same group of individuals. This method provides two tests with the same content but of different structure. Let's say, for example, for test A, there's 1 times 1 equals 2. Then in test B, there is 6 times 6 equals 36. The two tests are the same because the content was all about multiplication. Another example, in your question in test A, you ask, what makes an assessment different from evaluation? While on another version of the test, you ask what is assessment. So that's what the method parallel forms of reliability is. The two sets of scores are then correlated in order to evaluate the consistency of results across alternate versions. Equivalent forms are ideal for make-up tests or action researches that would utilize pre- and post-test. An equivalent test is not just a matter of rearranging the items. The main advantage of this method is to avoid memorization of answers. Unlike on the first method, the test-retest, on which there's a possibility that the test takers already memorized the question, of course, they already has an idea on what to answer. So if the two versions of tests being administered to the same sample group of test takers is correlated, then a higher chance that the test is reliable. The third source is internal consistency. It implies that a student who has mastery learning will get all or most of the items correctly, while a student who knows a little or nothing about the subject matter will get all or more of the items wrong. Internal consistency is typically a measure based on the correlations between different items on the same test on which split half method is used to test it. Basically, the test will be divided into two and together it will be administered to the same group of individuals. It could be done by dividing the items into odd or even numbers and correlate each other. For example, in the first half of the test, the respondent agree with the statement, I like to watch cartoons, or I've enjoyed watching cartoons with my siblings. In another half of the test, the respondent disagree the statement, I don't like watching Tom and Jerry cartoons. This would be indicative of good internal consistency of the test.
But what if the test has non-dichotomous items like Likert scale?
Yes, Melody. If the test has non-dichotomous items, We could recommend the use of Cronbach's alpha to ensure that the test is still consistent. Cronbach's alpha is a measure of internal consistency, that is how closely related a set of items are as a group. It is considered to be a measure of scale reliability. The general rule of thumb is that a Cronbach's alpha of 70 and above is good, 80 and above is better, and 90 and above is best. So moving to another source of reliability evidence, we already have the stability, equivalence, internal consistency. Now we have scorer-rater reliability. Teachers in here rate and scores based on their judgment. In this source, if it's only rated by one person, there's a question of reliability. So it's good to have a multiple weights or many judges. Say for example, in a contest, have you ever asked why there's no contest with one judge only? It's because if there's only one judge, there's a tendency of using her personal judgment or being biased. That's why it's very important to have different judges. In scorer-rater reliability, people do not necessarily rate in a similar way. They may have disagreements as to how response or materials truly reflect or demonstrate knowledge of the construct or skill being assessed. Certain characteristics of the raters contribute to errors like bias, halo effect, mood, fatigue, and etc. Inter-rater reliability is the degree to which different raters, observers, or judges agree in their assessment decisions. It is useful when grading essays, writing samples, performance assessment, and portfolios. To estimate the inter-rater reliability, the Spearman's rule or Cohen's kappa may be used to calculate the correlation coefficient between or among the ratings. So in Spearman's rule, higher rule coefficients denote a stronger magnitude of relationship between variables. Smaller rule coefficients denote weaker relationships. Positive correlations denote a relationship that travels at the same trajectory. As one value goes up, then the other value goes up. So, if there's a consistent results from different raters or observers, the higher chance for the score to be reliable. So, the last source of reliability evidence is decision consistency. So, decision consistency describes how consistent the classification decisions are rather than how consistent the scores are. So, decision consistency is not just about the score, but the classification. Decision consistency is seen in situations when teachers decide who will receive a passing or failing mark or considered to possess mastery or not. Example of these classifications that we are talking about is K-12 classification on grades, in which 74 and below are classified as the beginning level, whereas 75 to 79 are developing level, and 80 to 84 is approaching proficiency, and 85 to 90 is proficient, and so on. So as teacher, you should be unbiased or follow your personal judgment. So give your student the score they deserve based on their efforts. If decisions are consistent, then this student would be classified with the same level regardless of the type of assessment and method used.
Miss Mary, from the said source of reliability evidence, is there any instances or situations that would affect the consistency or the reliability of the assessment results?
Yes, Melody. There are measurement errors that would affect the student's assessment result consistency. This could be examining specific factors, or it's the boredom of the student in taking the test, lack of motivation, is ill or shy. Like for example, in oral recitation, the student was shy to answer, but then during exam, the student was able to answer the question you asked during the recitation. Another factor would be the text. There could be insufficient direction, ambiguous questions, or even tests that uses highfalutin words. It could also be because of scoring factor that affect the consistency. The teachers might be subjective or might be biased, or it could be random errors just like noisy environment.
So what are the ways to improve reliability of assessment results?
Yes, Melody. So the ways to improve reliability of assessment results are: first, lengthen the assessment procedure by providing more time, more questions, and more observation whenever practical. Second, broaden the scope of the procedure by assessing all the significant aspects of the largest learning performance. Third, improve objectivity by using a systematic and more formal procedure for scoring student performance. A scoring scheme or rubric would prove useful. So you should not base on your imagination. Next is use multiple markers by employing inter-rater reliability. So the more people involved in rating, the more the scores will be reliable. Next is combine results from several assessments, especially when making crucial educational decisions. Next is provide sufficient time to students in completing the assessment procedure. You should consider their level of knowledge. If you think they can't complete it at the period of time, then maybe you can give them more time for it. Teach students how to perform their best by providing practice and training to students and motivating them. If the student is giving their best, then you as the teacher can be able to measure their best effort, which is one of the ways for the assessment to be reliable. Match the assessment difficulty to the student's ability levels by providing tasks that are neither too easy or too difficult, and tailoring the assessment to each student's ability level when possible. Do not use highfalutin words in your test. Just level the language you use to the language they are currently in. And lastly, differentiate among students by selecting assessment tasks that distinguish or discriminate the best from the least able students. This is Mary Chris Digamo reporting.
To summarize the report of Ms. Ina and Ms. Mary, reliability refers to whether an assessment instrument gives the same result each time it is used in the same setting with the same type of subjects. Reliability essentially means consistent or dependable results. It is a part of assessment of validity. It has also two types. The internal reliability, which the consistency of the results delivered in the test, ensuring that the various items measuring the different constructs deliver consistent scores. And the external reliability, which a measure is consistent when assessed over time and across different individuals. In reliability, there are also different sources of evidences and assessment methods. Always remember that some of the suggestions in improving reliability overlap with those concerning validity. This is because reliability is a precursor to validity. However, it is important to note that high reliability does not ensure a high degree of validity.
I'm Katarina Forrester-Smith. I'm a senior psychometrician with Illuminate Education. You can think about it in terms of consistency of scores. If you test a student today and test a student tomorrow, our score is going to be similar, right? If you test one population of students and a different population of students, are you going to be seeing similar scores on the same assessment? And down to internal reliability, if you are administering the first part of the assessment to the students and the second part of the assessments, are the scores on the first part and the second part going to be similar? Are students performing on all of the items within any given assessment consistently? In a nutshell, test validity is whether any given assessment measures what it's supposed to measure. What we're trying to ascertain a lot of the times is content validity and criterion validity. Content validity, when we have item writers writing any given item, we're trying to make sure that the items align to certain standards, for example. In order to do this, we need multiple people making sure that the item aligns to a certain standard, or assessment as a whole aligns to a given number of standards, right? So having 3 people blindly aligning items or assessments to the standards, right? Having that content validity. On top of that, once the assessment is in production, what I do is criterion validity, right? How good of a predictor that assessment is to any other given instrument, any other given assessment. For example, end-of-year state assessment. So in order to do that, we correlate performance on any given assessment, benchmark any inspect assessment with state test performance or any other valid instrument, for example, ACT or SAT.
Hey everyone! Welcome to MIM Learnovate. Today in this video, I will show you difference between validity and reliability, examples of validity and reliability, and also share with you research papers on validity and reliability. So, let's get started. Reliability and validity are concepts used to evaluate the quality of research. They indicate how well a method, technique or test measures something. Difference between validity and reliability. Validity refers to the accuracy of a measure, whereas reliability refers to the consistency of a measure. In validity, it can relate to the question of whether the results really do represent what they are supposed to measure. On the other hand, in reliability, it can relate to the question of whether the results can be reproduced under the same conditions. Validity mainly focuses on the outcome, whereas reliability mainly focuses on maintaining consistent results. Validity has more analysis and is harder to achieve. On the other hand, reliability is comparatively easier and yields faster results. There cannot be validity without reliability, whereas there can be reliability without validity. Even if validity of an instrument is poor for certain tests, it can have high reliability. On the other hand, when reliability is poor, validity may also be poor. Thus, usefulness of a test or experiments are negligible. If the results are not valid, the test is of no use at all. Whereas, if the results cannot be replicated, the test is of little use. Examples of different types of validity are face validity, construct validity, content validity, criterion validity, concurrent validity, convergent validity, external validity, and internal validity. Examples of different types of reliability are test-retest reliability, parallel forms reliability, intra-rater reliability, internal reliability, and external reliability. I'm done with showing you difference between validity and reliability. Examples of validity and reliability. I have few research papers on validity and reliability. These are the research papers. 2 criteria for good measurements in research: validity and reliability. Validity and reliability in quantitative studies. Issues of validity and reliability in qualitative research. Contextualizing reliability and validity in qualitative research toward more rigorous and trustworthy qualitative social science in leisure research. Measuring reliability and validity instruments of work environment towards quality work life. A meta-analysis of interview length on reliability and validity. And validity in qualitative evaluation, linking purposes, paradigms, and perspectives. I have uploaded them on PDF drive. If you want link to PDF document, then comment below the video. I will share with you the link. I hope this video will be helpful for you. Tell us on which topic you want us to make video by commenting below.